The following program contains mature subject matter. Listener discretion is advised.
The latest trends and hottest topics, love and sex, handled honestly and with passion. Here's Dr. Laurie, CJAD 800.
50% of us will, or close to it, will go through a divorce. And many have a really, really hard time with it. So tonight, we want to help out. So if you're having trouble recovering from a breakup or a divorce, I think tonight's the night for you. I've invited in studio with me Vikki Stark. She's a psychotherapist. She's the director of the Sedona Counseling Center. She's also the author of several books, one of which is the Runaway Husbands. And she is having a retreat. It's called Jump Up. It's a divorce recovery weekend retreat, September 15th and 16th of this year. That might interest you. So if you have questions or you want to tell us about what helped you get through a divorce, we would love to hear from you, 514-800, or you can call in at 514-790-0800. Vikki, welcome back to the program. Always lovely to see you.
It's always great to be here, Laurie.
So let's talk about the breakups and how, can we ask a general question like how do most breakups occur? Or is it so different for everybody that like there's no generalization to be made?
Well, I think that it's impossible to make a general statement about how most breakups occur. But if we were to sort of whittle it down to the different ways that men and women end long-term relationships, we could see that for a lot of women, they end the relationship because they feel like they've become invisible.
Okay.
So they can't get their husband's attention. I mean, obviously, everything I'm saying is not in every
it's
case.
It's not for every
it's
single
not for
case.
everybody.
Obviously,
Yeah.
Yes.
But for a lot of the cases and the people that I see in my practice, they can't get their husband's attention. And they're busy with their kids all week long, or, they're working and then they come home and they feel like they have so much to do. And then the husband comes home from work and he's exhausted and he's fried and he really doesn't have a lot of juice left, to be able to commune with his wife and talk with her and really,
go out, do stuff, have fun.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's why a lot of marriage counselors prescribe date night.
That's right.
That's for women.
That's right.
I don't think it's all the men who want date night. I think it's the women who want date night.
It depends what date night ends with.
Yeah. It depends upon the subtext of date night. Right. So that for a lot of women, and I think about a couple that I worked with where, the woman's, they came to me for marriage counseling and basically she said, it's over. I can't do this anymore. And she said, I can never get your attention on the weekend. I want to go with you to the Granby Zoo, but you're just lying on the sofa or watching the game. And I can't do this anymore. I'm so lonely. And he said, well, I'm working. He said, it's not like I'm at the casino.
That's right.
I'm not drinking. I'm not womanizing. I'm working. I'm just tired. I just don't have the energy for it. And she said, well, it's too late. It's sort of all of my caring for you dribbled away and there's nothing left. And I think that that's a pretty common scenario for why women, they just get fed up.
Well, I think this is, and these are the statistics. Over 80% of divorces are initiated by women, which must mean that men and women also have different needs.
Yes.
Right?
Exactly. But the picture from why a man might leave, and this again, is not everybody, but for a lot of the men that I work with, they get to a certain point where they feel like, is this all there is? Right. I've been a good husband. I've been a good father. I've been a good worker. I've been a good son. I've been a good boy. I've done all the right things. And they feel like, when do I get to be James Bond? And they feel, they start to get scared. And, maybe we're talking about men in their 50s, 50s or 60s, and they start to look ahead and they say, what's ahead of me? And they sort of feel like they're dying inside and they want to break out and feel excited and feel alive. Plus, there's that fear thing that one day they're not going to be able to be sexual. They're not going to be able to get it up. And they're looking for something that will make them feel alive.
Right.
And so that often, that might be one of the typical scenarios that makes a man walk away from a marriage.
Right. And often in the arms of someone else.
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
That's the some of the reasons given for affairs later in life.
Yes.
Some people will call it the midlife crisis.
Yes.
Kind of thing.
Yeah. And you know what? I think, Laurie, I think it is a midlife crisis. I think that people go steaming ahead to a certain point, and then when the kids are in the late teens and they're looking ahead, and you know, that idea of just, you know, staying home and mowing the lawn for the rest of your life, it's not a turn on.
Empty nest isn't just about that. I'm loving my empty nest.
Oh, that's a good thing. Yeah.
You have to take advantage. Like, yeah, we have all these plans. Like,
Right.
it's like, what are we going to do when our nest is empty? We're going to do all these things. And
Yeah.
it's like, great. But you have to be on that same page. You have to have the same
Yes.
kind of excitement for these stages in life rather than fear. Of course, if you have all these fears and anxieties about it, it might lead you down a different path.
Yes.
Right.
And the one thing that I say to a lot of women who are frustrated that their husbands leave is, you know, and they say, I've done everything for him. You know, I took care of him all these years. I really cared for him. And I say to them, but there's one thing that you can never be, which is new.
Right. That's right.
can never be new.
I tell couples that too, who come in and say, I want us to get back what we had in the beginning. That was new. You can't get that back. And I always say, could you get your virginity back? No, you can't. It's
Right.
new is new.
Yeah.
And why? And that's why you can't compete with new either.
Exactly.
And new
Yeah.
is new and exciting, new and passionate, new and all these things. So. We've got Vikki Stark in studio. She is a psychotherapist. She's the director of the Sedona Counseling Center. She's the author of Runaway Husbands, The Abandoned Wife's Guide to Recovery and Renewal. We're going to talk about recovering from breakups, from divorce. I know your workshops are mostly for women,
yes.
right? But you know, men go through a lot of pain too,
100%.
considering that over 80%. They're the
marriages
ones
end.
who are dumped,
Right.
and are often left with, like, what happened? Like,
Yes.
this came from left field. For a lot of men, they say, like, this came from out of left field. But
Yes.
but actually, the women are saying, no, you just haven't been hearing my complaints all this
Exactly.
time. You know, you've kind of thought that, oh, I just shoved it under the rug. It's okay. It's
Yeah.
got better. And then eventually, like you say, the women might say, well, that's it. There's nothing left. Like, I've got nothing left. I've got
Right.
no chances left. Nothing left. And it gets to that point, which is very sad, because if couples could get help early on,
I know.
right, then we
I
wouldn't
know.
have this. We wouldn't have this pattern going on here. So have you had trouble recovering from a divorce? Talk to us. Tell us about it. 514-800, and tell us what has helped you. Have you did you go to therapy for yourself? Did you do workshops? Did you read? What has helped you get through this difficult period? And maybe it wasn't difficult for you. You could tell us that too. And maybe it was the best decision of your life and you didn't grieve it. And we want to hear from you as well. So all of these things here tonight with my guest, Vikki Stark.
The following program contains mature subject matter. Listener discretion is advised.
From the pleasure to the pain and everything in between. Passion with Dr. Laurie. News Talk Radio. CJAD 800.
Divorce recovery tonight. Vikki Stark is my guest. She is the expert in divorce recovery. Wrote a book called Runaway Husbands, The Abandoned Wife's Guide to Recovery and Renewal. She's also holding a divorce recovery weekend retreat on the 15th and 16th. You'll hear more about that tonight. And if you have questions for Vikki or comments that you want to write about your own divorce process and recovery, we'd love to hear from you at 514-800. This texter says, I'm afraid of getting married because divorce stories are so devastating. Sharing your time and space with a man who is so potentially lazy and needy. Who wants you to take care of him like a newborn child? This is my nightmare. You know, you set it up that way, though. You have to realize you have a say in all of this. If you start off treating your partner like a child,
Yes.
he's going to. Who doesn't want to be treated that way, right? Who doesn't want to be
Exactly.
catered to? It's your job not to do that and get yourself into a relationship that is far more equal.
Yes.
In all of that, which they exist, by the way.
You know, they say the most important thing in marriage is selection.
Yes.
Yes.
Of course.
And it reminds me of a story of my ex-husband told about his previous marriage. That the first night after they got married, his wife made this wonderful dinner, and he sat down to all this gourmet food, and it was so terrific. And the second night, he came home from work anticipating, what are we going to have tonight? And there's nothing happening. And so he sits on the sofa, nothing happening. And eventually he says, what's for dinner? And she says, what are you making?
That's right. Thank you. That's right.
So that's the training process.
Yeah, I don't. It's a word that, you know, when you say train them, it's a little bit. It's, no. Kind of pejorative for men, unfortunately, as if it's their dogs to be trained, which not. But selection is key. I remember, for me, it was a great attractive quality that my husband, then boyfriend, whatever, knew how to cook.
Yes.
To me, that was a
that
huge
nice.
thing.
Yep.
Right. And I actually hardly ever cooked.
Yes.
25 years married. I come home, I say what's for dinner.
That's amazing. That's my dream.
So that's been great. So again, pick right, you know.
But, you know, this texture is really raising a lot of people's fears.
Yes.
You know, that once you get trapped into something, that you can't really work with somebody, that you can't make compromises, you know, that you have to expect that you're stuck with whatever personality that the other person, you know, brings to the table. And that's not necessarily, you know, it's not the case.
That's right. And also I would recommend in if you're really that fearful, is go for pre-marriage counseling.
Yeah.
Because in pre-marriage counseling, we actually talk to couples about all the potential, all those things, and all of these issues that you just brought up, you bring up in pre-marriage counseling, and you talk about division of labor and what your expectations are, and when you have kids, what do you expect your partner to do, and how you plan to, like, whatever shared stuff you need to discuss, how money will be spent, handled, how you value handled, all of that is all really, really important, and you could do that before you ever get married. So it's clarified, and if you need to put it down on paper. Like, it's part of a contract.
But when you think about it, it's pretty remarkable that people enter into marriages without ever discussing how are we going to handle the finances, and what kind of a parent do you see yourself as being, and, you know, what are your goals? Like,
isn't that
people
amazing?
Never talk about that. I mean, that's pretty rare.
Well, because people think that marriage fixes everything, or that love is all you need. And I always say this: love is not enough. Love is not enough to keep a marriage going.
Yes, it
requires all of these. You're working as a team. You can't work independently. Like, you have to work as a team. And what does that imply and involve? It's compromise and negotiation and communicating and all of that. This text write says, exciting as new may be for most, there are those who nonetheless prefer a continued progression and hence an evolving intimacy and friendship within their relationship, as opposed to continuously starting fresh, yet ultimately establishing nothing in terms of quality and mutual growth and development. It's a very good point, but those are it's a set of values too, that, and a commitment to a relationship, and a realistic approach to marriage, too, because it can never be new all the time. Yes. And that's exactly how marriages and love does evolve. So there was a study done that showed how people's expectations about marriage and relationships were a good indicator of whether they were going to get divorced. Exactly. Yeah. And especially when it came to sexuality and intimacy and all of that. Yeah. Grace says, according to Captain and Tennille, love will keep us together. No, it won't. Love's not enough.
It's good as a start.
It's a good start, but it won't keep you together if there's if too much there. This text says, I've never heard of pre-marriage counseling. I thought that only religious people had access to this. Thanks so much. No, well, you don't. Anybody has access to a marriage counselor. I have counseled many a couple that before they ever got married, and sometimes because they had the insight, they said, we're having these little issues, and then they decide they'll work on it beforehand, and that's pre-marriage counseling, basically.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
I think it's a great idea.
So let's talk about the recovery. Like, not everybody goes through a bad reaction. Like, what are some of the reactions you see from divorce? Yeah.
Well, I think it depends a lot on your role in the breakup of the marriage. there's all different kinds of breakups of marriage. I mean, there are marriages where people have been bickering and fighting and swearing at each other, and threatening divorce and leaving and coming back, and and it's very chaotic, and there's a lot of tension and obviously like that. And then at some point somebody says, I can't take this anymore, and pulls the plug, and the marriage is over, but it didn't come out of the blue.
Right.
Nobody's surprised.
Right.
The kids are relieved, and
That's right.
and so that even though, it's heartbreaking and it is the end of a dream, as every divorce is the end of a dream for at least one of the parties.
Right.
But at least it is not a total shock. And in some ways, maybe that makes it a little bit easier to accept the fact that the marriage ends, because it doesn't come out of the blue. And then the other end of the spectrum are the people that I wrote about in Runaway Husbands, where, either for men or for women, they thought things were going just fine, until the day their partner taps them on the shoulder and says, it's over and I'm leaving right now. And it comes out of the blue, and that kind of a divorce is extremely hard to recover from, because you had no preparation.
Right.
Like one client said to me, he left me 6 months ago. He just forgot to tell me.
Right.
So he kept living with her and planning his exit strategy, and she knew nothing about
Right.
it. And then he sort of, tells her all about it when everything's prepared on his side.
He's already got his new place.
Yeah,
He's already
everything's
done everything.
set.
Right.
And the car, his clothes are in the trunk of his car.
Wow.
And then he tells her about it, and then she has to. Then
Talk
her whole
about
reality.
shock.
Yeah, it's really, it is truly a traumatic experience when your reality as you know it is changed from 1 minute to the next minute.
Right.
And so that sense of recovery is not only for divorce, but it's also to try to recognize your life. Because you didn't see this coming.
Right.
So in every divorce, in most divorces, there's usually a leaver and a leavee.
Right.
Even if people have been fighting and bickering, if they, the one who finally pulls the plug is the leaver,
Right.
and then their options, then they're out of options, and
Right.
you can't talk them into staying.
Right. Sometimes they use therapy as the last. Okay, I'll go to therapy. It's almost like the last,
Right.
That last ditch, but they're not really in it, like, because they've been saying no for so long that people forget that in a couple, when you've had problems for a long time and you refuse to go for help, when one asks for it, the other person starts to detach little by little by little.
Yes.
And until the point where they're completely gone.
Yeah, they're so far gone.
They're so far gone.
Yeah.
And even going to therapy at that point may not help. I mean, it could in some cases, but often it's already too late. They go there just to say, I tried.
Right.
And sometimes I see that, and they still have, for example, a mistress, or they're still having affairs.
Yes.
So they're not really trying.
Yes.
That's not trying in my books, right? So this text writes, hi, this show comes at a good time for me. Unfortunately, I'm thinking of getting a divorce from my husband. I've suggested we get couples counseling since we have a very difficult time communicating. Our relationship is emotionally and verbally abusive. We have threatened divorce multiple times. I don't think we can fix it, but I am afraid of divorce. I don't think it will be very friendly, and we have 2 kids. I don't want them to have a difficult time. Any advice? So this is something that we will come back to and talk about, how to divorce in the best way possible. We'll have to see if we can figure that out. How to divorce in the best way possible. Vikki Stark is here. She's a psychotherapist. She's the director of the Sedona Counseling Center, and she is the author of Runaway Husbands. Her retreat is coming up September 15th and 16th. It's called the Jump Up Divorce Recovery Weekend Retreat, which you can get information about. We'll tell you a little bit more along the show. So if you have questions specifically about the retreat, you can let us know, of course, and that's taking place September 15th and 16th. So coming up, we'll talk about what to do in a situation where you want to divorce, you think you need to divorce, but you are afraid to divorce. We'll discuss that on the other side of the news.
The following program contains mature subject matter. Listener discretion is advised.
Your relationship's on the line. Connect with Dr. Laurie now. 514-790-0800. Passion. News Talk Radio. CJAD 800.
Tonight on the program, we're talking about divorce recovery. Pretty difficult. And why people get divorced. Well, we've touched on a lot of different aspects of divorce, the leaver versus the leavee, and what people go through. But this texter really, I think, sums it up for many people. I'll reread this text again so Vikki can answer it. Vikki Stark is my guest tonight. This show comes at a good time. Unfortunately, I'm thinking of getting a divorce from my husband. I've suggested we get couples therapy since we have a very difficult time communicating. Our relationship is emotionally and verbally abusive. We have threatened divorce multiple times. I don't think we can fix it, but I am afraid of divorce. I don't think it will be very friendly, and we have 2 kids. I don't want them to have a difficult time. Any advice? So a couple things that stand out for me here. The fact that they have kids and the fact that they probably have that the kids are exposed to a lot of this emotional and verbal abuse, because you said something earlier that the kids are relieved. Sometimes it's better for the kids.
Sometimes it is.
Right. Like often people say, I'll stay for the kids, I'm staying for the kids. Yeah. But is that the best thing to do?
Yeah. Well, sometimes the kids are just, they're internalizing the stress. They're lying in their beds. They can hear the raised voices downstairs. Yes. And then they can't, then they go to school and they can't think about the math test because they just don't feel good.
Right.
And so you're creating an environment that's an abrasive environment for children, and it's not a healthy place to grow.
Right.
But I think, 2 things that sort of jumped out at me was from this texture, which I think, that we really need to touch on, is that, first of all, she talked about emotional and verbal abuse.
Yes.
And secondly, she's talking about a difficult time communicating. And that's so she doesn't want to go to marriage counseling because she's afraid, I don't think we can fix it. But if they haven't gone to marriage counseling, I think that at the end of the relationship, that the therapist's office might be a safe place.
That's right.
To have a communication that needs to be had.
And even about divorce.
And even about separation
right.
or divorce. And the other thing I wanted to remark on is that I've sometimes seen, or maybe often seen, that in the separation process is when people become more open to each other.
That's right.
And more honest to each other.
I've seen that.
And people say, we've had the best conversations of our whole marriage.
That's right.
In the last 2 months, before we separated.
That's right.
So that I think that to at least give it a try. And one of the things that I often suggest to people who come to see me who are reluctant to come to therapy, or one of the partners is reluctant, is I say to them, don't say you're going for therapy. Now we're signing on for 6 months of once a week therapy, but go to one session.
That's right.
And see what it feels like, and see whether it feels positive and and relieving in some way, and whether you walk out of there feeling better than you walked in, or at least with better ideas or better tools, and then you decide after that. And sometimes that one session, people say, "Whoa, I didn't realize that it could be so good."
Right. And you're getting a different perspective.
Exactly.
You're getting somebody else who say, this is what I'm witnessing here, or this is what I see, and this is what you could work on. And oftentimes there's a lot of hope that comes with it as well if people are motivated to try.
Yes.
Sometimes difficult when there's abuse, like real abuse, and
yes.
a person doesn't take accountability for the abuse. And responsibility for it.
Sure.
So there's all kinds of, obviously, complications that could arise. But nonetheless, without trying, you don't know. And this is a therapist's office is at least a safe place to be heard.
But the other thing she's talking about is, I don't think it's going to go well. If we do separate, I can't imagine we're going to figure out how to be good co-parents.
It'll be
together.
Nasty. Like,
it's going to be
people
nasty.
are afraid of nastiness.
Yeah, and it so often is.
Right.
It's like it's so heartbreaking.
Yes.
How painful it is. After a separation or divorce.
True.
And so that there are skills that can be learned, so that post separation, that people can manage to sort of rein in their anger, their fury, in the service of trying to get this job done, of being able to separate this relationship in a way that doesn't do too much damage.
Right, and keeping the children at the forefront.
Yes.
Doing everything that's best for them, and that's in their best interest. It is not in their best interest for parents to hate each other and fight like cats and dogs and berate each other and whatever else. It is not in their best interest. Kids are always the victims there because they are put in the middle.
Yes.
Whether you like it or not, they are put in the middle. And so our province offers free mediators. So that's, you get 6 free sessions of mediation when you have children. So that's something that I would definitely recommend. And then at least may not get as ugly. It's possible. Hopefully it can mediate that a little bit.
But, while we're on this topic, if I can say that people who are thinking of separating, that you have to make a solemn pledge to yourself that you're going to do everything possible to do this decently.
Right.
Because people, sort of, they just, as soon as the we becomes the me, and they stop thinking of the best interest of the family and they think of the best interest of themselves, they feel as though it's okay to do all of these really dirty things. Right. And it's really not okay.
No, that's never okay. Be kind. I know it's hard to be kind in when you're feeling this way, but yes, do it in the most peaceful way, the most civil way. Let's just say civil way possible. You don't have to be anybody's best friend, but the most civil way. This texter writes, I've had relationships where there's no arguing, and I can honestly say that those are always the worst ones. If you cannot argue or at least discuss something, then you're not meant for each other. Plus, you end up with somebody that just says, yes, I agree, and then just go do whatever it is that you were disagreeing with. So it's true. What he says is that, yes, the couples who never argue worry me the most, right? Because there's always somebody that sucks it up. That agrees and then quietly is building up all this resentment, which leads often to that person saying, I'm done, right? But the other person didn't have a debate back and forth. Yes. And then it's felt as abusive to the person who's shutting up. But so I think I agree with that. Maybe love will keep a couple together long enough for them to negotiate what will practically sustain their relationship in the long run, but certainly not past that point for the long haul solely in itself. It's not, love isn't enough, but it's enough to get you talking. It's enough to get you negotiating. Absolutely. You're right about that. Texter writes, my lady fell out of love with me in May after 17 years and 2 kids and a house. She let me know that she's done and over it in July. Still living together uncomfortably, sleeping in the same bed, and the kids don't know. Praying for her to change her mind, but losing hope. So what's the strategy thing going on here?
Okay. Well, a lot of transitions have taken place in this couple. And I just want to make in a parenthesis the fact that one of the books that you referred to that is a book that I wrote that's called How to Tell the Kids.
Oh, okay, great.
Yeah, where I did research on the safest way to inform children that parents are separating that will reduce the risk of trauma for children.
Can you give us a couple of tips?
Yeah, tips? Because so often parents, they just give kids, they sit them down and give them the geographical explanation, which is, I'm moving over there and your mom's going to move over here and you're going to go to mom's house and dad's house and don't worry, it's going to be fine. Because they don't want the kids to have a strong reaction. And the best way to safeguard your child in the transition process is to stay attuned, to have attunement to the emotional state of your child, so that if the child does have a huge reaction and throws himself on the floor and starts crying and screaming and all of that, rather than to try to cheer him up and tell him you're going to get 2 sets of Christmas presents or whatever it is, that you want to stay close, physically close and emotionally close and attuned, so that I think that it is possible to protect children in this process. But from what this texter is saying,
how about we get to more of that, but how to tell the kids and also what to do when you're still together in the home and one person tells you divorce is coming.
Straight talk that's all inclusive. Passion with Dr. Laurie. News Talk Radio, CJAD 800.
Talking about divorce recovery tonight, we've got Vikki Stark in studio. She's the author of Runaway Husbands, but is also doing a divorce recovery weekend for women, September 15th and 16th. And actually, somebody asked me, are you doing any for men, or is this for men? So it's not for men.
Not at this point.
But off air, we were talking about
starting
one, and Vikki was like, how many men would go? So maybe tell us, how many guys would go to a retreat? So we said, okay, maybe you'll just do a 2-hour thing. Maybe that's enough. It's hard enough. All right, so let's answer this question. This gentleman who says that his wife, after 17 years, and they have 2 kids, just let him know in May that they're done, but they're still living together. So that's a difficult situation for the person being left, that they're still sleeping in the same bed, but a few months ago, she's saying, I want a divorce, or I'm not in love with you anymore, which is, by the way, something I hate, that I'm not in love with you anymore. Yes. Rather than, it's like saying, I don't feel the same way I did when we first met. Duh. Like, you can't be in that state forever. Yeah. Exactly. And this gentleman is praying for her to that she should change her mind. And he added, we're both just turning 40. And he says, and nothing went wrong. Great family, so I thought. Is this her midlife crisis? The midlife crisis doesn't just happen just like that.
Right. Yeah. And I think that, what everybody's looking for in life is to understand their lives.
Yes.
So it sounds as though from what he's talking about, he's a bit mystified.
Yes.
She broke the news to him in May, and then they're still sleeping in the same bed. And then by July, I think it was, she said that, it's pretty much over, but nothing has really been clarified.
Right.
And I think that people really need clarity. And so it's necessary to really take the bull by the horns, I think, on his part. And, invite her to go take a walk or something and say, let's really talk this through. Let's really understand what's happening here. Even though sometimes people are afraid to do that because they're afraid if they open that door,
right,
the other person is going to push it open and run out of it.
Run out, yeah.
But I think that living in suspended animation and not being able to know really what's happening in your life is very debilitating. It's demoralizing.
And destructive to yourself.
Right. Mm-hmm. And so that I think that, you really have to just take that breath and go and have that deep and profound conversation with this important person in your life and say, okay, let's figure this out. Let's understand what's going on.
Or let's understand what went wrong. Or
Yes.
You might have thought that it was all great and this came as a shock to you, but maybe if you hear her out, that's not the case. So you might be surprised.
Yes.
This text writes, I knew somebody that was about to get divorced and ran out and collected all the money they possibly could from all their bank accounts. Didn't matter. His ex-wife found it and took half of everything. Well, that's when it gets really mean.
Yeah, and that's what we were talking about, right? That bad behavior.
Right.
Really, let's be adults here.
And there's a trickle-down effect to that bad behavior.
Yes.
Where the kids end up knowing about this stuff. And, that's another question I wanted to, because this came up in a session where they were getting divorced. The wife was really, really angry.
Yes.
And wanted to tell the kids that dad had an affair or had affairs. And I was like, this is not what they should be burdened with, all the details of what went wrong in the marriage.
Yes. I mean, this was a huge topic in my book, How to Tell the Kids, because we have to we have to try to protect the child's relationship with both parents.
Right.
So that even though the marriage is falling apart, these children need to have the right to love both parents. And that very normal feeling that you want to tell them the truth. And often people justify it by saying, I want them to know that cheating is bad and that it destroys, in case they grow up, and I need them to know that. But really, that's really a justification. And I think that, if people can really be mature and really be adults, they can recognize that their child needs to have 2 parents, even if one of the parents, had an affair or did something, that wasn't right to the other parent.
Right.
So as much as possible, unless, of course, a parent is an inappropriate parent and will not take proper care of the child, really the best gift you can give to your child is permit him or her to have to love both parents.
Right. And of course, this is a problem with parental alienation that we see so often, where the kids are almost forced to pick sides, or if they pick one,
Yes.
It just hurts them. That they suffer from this. They really do. And I think sometimes people going through a divorce don't see past their nose. They don't see the impact on everybody else.
Yeah. Well, I just wanted to mention that at the Jump Up, some of the things that we're going to be talking about are that period after a separation where you just feel so lost and you feel so lonely, and it just feels like the whole world is going on and you're just still. And how to start to kickstart your life again, jumpstart your life again, so that you can start to feel vital and energy and alive. And there'll be workshops that will help women really learn that, of course, the marriage was important, but they still have a life, and how to get that life going again.
That's great. And this is so important. What other things are you covering there?
Well, it's always like this amazing experience, Laurie.
That's
and
great.
People come from all over the world, literally, from
love
Europe
that.
and, all over the United States and Canada. And what happens is that it becomes this phenomenal bonding experience, because you're in a room with other people who know exactly your shorthand. They know exactly what you're going through. And so that is a tremendous part of the healing. But then, of course, I give workshops, and I invite other therapists to come in and give workshops as well.
That's great.
And we I'm a practical person, so we teach skills and help people learn how they can rebuild their lives.
This is great. Great service being provided here. Divorce Recovery Weekend Retreat is taking place September 15th and 16th. You can check it out at runawayhusbands.com, which is also the name of one of Vikki's books. Vikki Stark has been my guest. This is great stuff. I wish we had more time, because
it's really good.
I mean, there's so many things that I had a list of like 10 other issues I wanted to get to, but our listeners drive the show, and I like that as well. And some very important issues came up from our listeners. So thank you all for your texts. And Vikki, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. It's always a pleasure.
Good
Laurie.
luck with Jump Up. I'm sure it's going to be yet another great success. Again, runawayhusbands.com. That is the website, the name of the book, and where you can get information about the retreat. Thank you all for listening to us and for spending your precious time with us. Thanks to our technical producer, Dave Simon. You can connect with me on social media at Dr. Laurie Betito, Betito, or my website, drlaurie.com. Coming up next on CJAD, the CTV National News. Have a great rest of the evening, and remember to live your life with passion.